Hi everybody, welcome to Introduction to Graphing module. As I am doing this walkthrough, the steps that I am following are located in the graphing module. So if you want to have that open and walk through it with me, that's totally fine, or you can just watch and follow along later. So first things first, you are going to need to use Microsoft Excel. Google Sheets can be used in extreme circumstances, but there are some buttons that Microsoft Excel has that Google Sheets does not have. So, as much as possible, you're going to want to use Excel. And just so you know, in case you didn't know this, you do get the software for free. So if you just go to the IT website of the school website, you can find the place to download that. And if anything, I will post the link so you guys can find it faster. So, excuse me. Anyway, so what we're doing is we're going to learn how to graph. I am again following the lab modules here. So first thing it says to do is to open the workbook, which we already have. And then the next thing it wants us to do is it wants us to label volume. So just as a little bit of a quick reference, the horizontal, they're called cells. So these horizontal cells are the rows, and then the ones that are top to bottom are the columns. So each box is called a cell. So each of these are cells. So we're going to row 1, column A, which is over here, and it says it wants us to label it as volume. And whenever you're adding your labels, make sure that you have your units in there as well. So that's volume in microliters. And then the next step is to label the next column as mass in grams. Right? On your lab module, lab manual, it's asking you to figure out which of these two, volume or mass, is your independent and dependent variable and why. So think about that, and then I'm sure your lab TA will confirm which one is which, but it's just like in math, right? So these are going to be, I guess, spoiler alert, these are going to be your X values, volume, right? And then your Y values are going to be your mass right here. So the next step wants us to add our data and then add each team member as well. So this one right here is technically going to be me. So I'm going to put me here. And then I'm just going to make up some names here. And let's say Bill. And then we'll say Samantha, right? And then we'll say mass grams of Cody, and then mass grams of Dale, right? And if you notice, this one right here, Samantha's name is covered up. So for you to fix that, all you have to do is hover between the two columns until it changes to that black kind of arrow looking thing, and double click, and then it'll just fix it and make sure that it fits just fine. So I'm just gonna make up some data, right, just to pretend that we did this lab. So your numbers are gonna be different. Just make sure that you use your own data. I'm just kind of making things up here as I go. Oops. Give me 1 second. Let me just fill these in. Oops. If you're watching this, you can totally skip over a couple of seconds while I do this. And this will probably make our graph super funky. So again, just make sure you're using your own data and not mine. We're just really worried about the steps here. Okay, so now that we have filled in the data, what it wants us to do is it wants us to calculate the average mass obtained by your team members, right? So we are gonna go to, we're gonna go over here to column G. Now it says column F on the steps, but it's okay. It's whatever's at the end, right? We're just gonna add that, and we're gonna label that average mass in grams. Right, and then I'm just going to fix that so that it fits perfectly. And so what you're doing, you can do this two ways, right? Excel uses a lot of things called formulas and stuff like that. So there's two ways you can do it. You can either, right? You can either type it or you can either highlight it. Either way, you're going to want to start your calculation with the word average, right? And then I need an open parentheses, and see how it says number one, number two? This is where what I mean by you can just highlight, but just highlight across. If you highlight more than what you need, it is going to mess that up, and it's going to give you a number that is unexpected. So if I only want the average of my 100 microliters volume, then I'm just going to do that, right? And then I'm going to close the parentheses, press enter, and now I have an average mass, right? The other way to do it, if you want to be technical about it, is same thing. So I'm going to erase this. You can do it and just type it out. So you would type out average, right? And then you would go C, let's see, that's a C2, or sorry, C2. And it'll show you if you do the wrong one. And then you'll need a colon, and then you're going to go to F2 and see how it also highlights it for you. So whatever works for you, they give you the same thing, right? Which is the average mass. And so you'll do that for the rest of it. One quick way to do it is, let me go hover over here. If you see this tiny square down here, notice how my plus signs becomes like a thin plus sign. All you gotta do is you just click and then drag it down, and then that same formula of average, if you look over here, that same formula of average is applied to all those cells, right? It's just now the row numbers are changing. So that's one quick tip for you. So now it says on there, it says to graph the data, you need to determine which columns represents the dependent variable. So remember, again, our volume is going to be our X, so our independent, which means our mass is our dependent variable, right? So it says highlight the column that contains the data points for your dependent variable, and then it'll show you. So I can, and so all we're graphing here is the average, right? So we actually don't even need the rest of the stuff. You just need the very end. So you're gonna need your volume, and then, right, I would click the control function and then highlight the mass as well. If you're not very good at Excel, what I would do is I would just highlight this, copy, paste it down here, take the average mass, copy, and paste it down here so that they're next to each other, right? Although it did not like that, so I'll do this. So when you're copying it, again, this is why Excel is kind of finicky. Notice how, let me show you what just happened so that you can figure this out too. So if I'm highlighting this, automatically what it's going to copy is the equation, not the number. So if I want these numbers, right, I'm copying it, and then when I paste it, I actually want this one, which just shows the values, right? Otherwise, it's going to do that thing with the REF, right? It just means that they can't find those numbers. So you're going to highlight just these two, because whatever else you highlight is going to mess it up. So you're going to just highlight these two, and then you're going to insert, and then you're going to insert, it says a scatter graph. So here are all your charts here. A scatter graph is going to be this one right here, right? So you click that, it's going to ask you which one you like, and if you hover, it'll show you which, what they look like, but we're going to want this one right here, right? So let's see here. So the next thing that we need after you do your graph, right, it says that you need to be able to find the trend line. So in order to do that, we're going to do a couple of things. We're going to click this and see this plus sign right here. The plus sign will have all of these chart elements. Now, depending on if you're using a Mac or a PC, I'm using a PC right now, this might look different, but you're looking for the thing called trend line, right? So you're going to click on that and see that the dotted line showed up, right? So you have a trend line, and then it also wants us to do the R value. So I'm going to hover over here. Let's see. And do more options, and then this thing shows up. So I have my trend line, which is fine, but it also wants us to display our R value. So that's going to be down right here. So if I click on that, notice how the number shows up over there as well, right? So that is your trend line. And it says on your module, the R square value is a measure of how well the data points fit the line. So because this is not a bar graph, this is a scatter plot, right? This trend line shows you the trend, right? Is it, a positive trend, a negative trend, or zero trend? So it's showing you how close it is to that line. So the closer the R square value is to 1.0, the more linear the relationship is. So zero point 0.6 is pretty good, right? It's not super like exact, but it's pretty good. So that's pretty much what you need to do in terms of getting your trend line and your R value on there. Now, there are some requirements that needs to be on your graph as well. So you already have your title. I personally would change that because that's not a descriptive title, right? It just says average mass, which is totally fine if you want to do that. But if you are in my class, I've shown you guys to do the volume in microliters versus average mass in grams. Right now, I also do need my axis label. So I'm going to go. So what I did is I clicked on this. These little things showed up. I'm going to click plus, and then I need to add axes title. So I'm going to click this, and notice that they showed up right there anyway. So down here, you can just double click it, and it's going to let you type into it. Down here, you can put volume in microliters, and then over here is going to be your average mass in grams. Right, and then let me just make sure we didn't miss anything. So what you're going to do, it says that you need to add this to a document, right? So, you can print it right there if you'd like. Or you can open a Microsoft Word document and then glue it over there. Just make sure, right? Make sure that you have the line, the trend line, and the R value on there. And that's how you use Excel, right? So hopefully that helps a little bit. If you have any questions or it talks about something in the module that I missed, just let me know. We'll talk about it. But that's pretty much it. This one does not need a legend because we only have those sets of data.